John Duncan started work on Monday, and Mary Carter showed him round the factory. The most important thing that the company produced was a new paint for cars. It was a very strong, hard paint, which nothing could damage. Mary and her chemists had developed it, and they had tested it all over the world. Neither acid nor salt water could damage it, and cars came back from both the Arctic and the Sahara looking like new. The company was beginning to make a lot of money from this paint, and it had brought 400 new jobs to the town. One day, when he was working with the paint, John spilt some of the waste products on his leg. He cleaned it off quickly, but it left a red, painful place on his skin, which would not go away. It kept him awake at night. He told his doctor what he had spilt on it, and the doctor looked at him strangely. "So, these chemicals had something to do with the new paint, did they?" the doctor asked carefully. "Yes, I told you. It was a bottle of the waste products. I was looking at them in my office." "I see." The doctor looked out of the window thoughtfully. His fingers moved quietly on his desk. "And your company is producing a lot of these waste products now, I suppose?" "Yes, of course." John was in a hurry. He had to meet someone important in 10 minutes. "Look, can you give me something to put on it or not?" "Oh, yes." The doctor began to write something on a piece of paper. "Put this on, night and morning, and the pain will go in a day or two. But I'm afraid the skin there will stay red for a year or two. They're nasty chemicals, Mr. Duncan, you know." "Yes, I know." John smiled at him. "But don't worry, Doctor. We're very careful with them in the factory. No one can go near them without special safe clothing. You can come and see if you like." "I'm very pleased to hear it," said the doctor. He gave the piece of paper to John. "Thank you," said John. He went towards the door. "Mr. Duncan?" "Yes?" John looked back, surprised. "Where do these waste products go when the factory has finished with them? Into the river?" "Well, yes, of course," said John. "But it's all right, you know," he added quickly. "It's very carefully checked all the time. It's a big river, and we only produce a few hundred litres of the waste products a day, and we're only 2 kilometres from the sea after all." "Good," said the doctor. "I wouldn't want anyone to drink those waste products, that's all." "They won't, Doctor," said John. "All the drinking water comes out of the river 5 kilometres upstream, you know that. Who's going to drink salt water from the river mouth, for heaven's sake? Chemists from London have checked it too, you know, and our company lawyers know all about it. So it's not dangerous, and we're not doing anything wrong. Don't worry about it." He went out of the door, and after half an hour he had forgotten the conversation. He was a very busy man now. All day he had to test different types of paints and make sure they were safe. He was also busy buying a big, comfortable house for his family, with a large field beside it, where Christine could keep a horse. The house was 1/2 kilometre from the sea, and its gardens went down to the river. There was an empty boathouse there. "Can we have a boat, Dad?" Andrew asked. "I mean, not now, of course, but one day, when you've finished paying for the house, perhaps." John laughed. His children had been poor for so long, but now he could buy them anything they wanted. "You can have a boat now if you want, my son," he said happily. "If I can afford a big house like this, I can certainly afford a small boat. We'll go fishing every week, shall we? And I'll teach you both to sail in the evenings. I've always wanted to do that, you know." He could not believe how lucky he was. He had a good job at last, a fine home, and his children had everything they wanted. He only wished his wife, Rachel, was alive to enjoy it with him. There was only one thing that he could not give his children now. He could not give them back their mother. 4. The Seals. A few months later, John invited Mary to a meal in the new house. It was a difficult evening. He had never invited anyone to their old flat, and the children's friends never came for meals. The new house was very untidy, and John was nervous about the food. He and Christine cooked a chicken because they thought it was easy. But the chicken was tasteless, and the rice was too soft. Mary smiled and pretended not to notice. But the evening went badly. Christine was angry with her because she tidied up the kitchen, and Andrew was angry with her because she didn't want to watch TV. Both the children went to bed early and thought about their mother. But Mary came again, on a Sunday, and John took them all out in their new boat. That was much better. Mary didn't know how to sail, so the children had to tell her what to do. She did what she was told, and seemed to be happy. John sat at the back of the boat and watched his children quietly. He felt proud of them, and he thought they were proud of him too. The first time Mary and the children laughed together, John felt a big smile come onto his face. It was a beautiful, sunny day in the middle of May. There was a good wind, and the sailing was fun. The boat sailed fast over small, white-topped waves. The sky was blue and clear. They sailed down to the mouth of the river, where there were lots of small islands and sandbanks. "Look, Dad! Quick! Over there! What are they?" Andrew pointed excitedly to one of the long, low sandbanks. "Seals," said John. "Haven't you seen them before?" "No," said Andrew. "Only in films, not in real life." His face was shining, excited, happy. "Do they really live here?" "Yes. It's a group of seal families. The mothers come here every year to have their babies." They sailed closer to the sandbank, until they were only about 20 meters away from the seals. Wet, shiny seal mothers lifted their heads and looked at them with their blue eyes. The baby seals were drinking milk from their mothers, climbing over them, and playing in the shallow water. Then a big father seal lifted his head and stared angrily at them. "I think they're beautiful," said Mary. "I never knew they lived here, so close to the town. It makes me feel really happy just to see them." "Yes, it does, doesn't it?" said Christine. "I think nothing can be really wrong with the world if they can live here, all by themselves, with no one looking after them." "Yes," said Mary, "and they're really beautiful, too. Look! Did you see that little one, playing on his mother's back? I wish I could do that." John smiled as he watched Mary and his children laughing and talking together. He thought the world was a good place, too. 5. The New Experiment. A few days later, John asked Mary to look at another experiment. He took her into a long, quiet room at the back of the factory. The room was full of the noises of small animals. "I've been testing the waste products," he said. "Here, look at this." He gave her a sheet of paper. "Some of these rats have had the waste products in their food and drinking water. There's no real problem yet. 1 or 2 have become ill, but not many. There's nothing very serious." Mary read the results carefully. She didn't like this kind of experiment, but she knew it was necessary. And John was right. No rats had died, and not very many were ill. "So, what do you want to show me?" she asked. "This," he said. He opened a box by the window. "These 10 rats have had the waste products in their drinking water for 2 weeks now. I gave them a lot, 5 parts per million. They're going to have babies today. If the babies are okay, we've got nothing to worry about." "Oh, John," she said, "what an awful thing to do." I know, he said. But he wasn't listening. "Look," he said excitedly. "Some of them have been born already." He lifted some of the baby rats out of the box and looked at them through a magnifying glass. "Oh dear," he said at last sadly. "Perhaps there is a problem. Look." Mary looked through the magnifying glass. She began to feel ill. There was a long silence. "There certainly is a problem." Mary's voice sounded loud and high in the quiet room. She stared at the small animals under the magnifying glass. "Baby rats, with no eyes, no ears, 6 legs. Oh, John, John, what have you done?" He looked at her strangely. "It's awful, isn't it? But I had to know. And remember, Mary, their mothers have had 5 parts per million of these chemicals in their drinking water for 2 weeks. That's a lot. Much, much more than we're putting in the river." Mary looked away from the rats. She remembered the beautiful afternoon that they had spent with John's children, sailing on the clear blue water. "John, these waste products are dangerous," she said. "We've got to stop putting them in the river."